Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. In this episode, we're going to take a look at a piece by the AI generative artist known as Crypto Algo. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about this sense of implied motion. We're going to talk about the iridescent dance of light and magic, and then we're also going to talk about the rise of AI generative fantasy art. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this piece, you're met with this incredible accent here. Of course, most of the scene is really kind of this midnight black backing, and that is the perfect neutral atmosphere for this lucid, really brilliant light on dark contrast to emphasize itself to the highest degree possible. And so that is a very energetic scene, and it brings us in with absolute ease. And so you'll see, of course, this iridescent color within this work. This is a very, very vivid, very diverse display of colors. You have everything from your blues to your purples. You have kind of those golds, little hints of green as well, and all intertwined within that, purples, everything in between. And so this iridescent color, it's kind of this dance of light and magic, and it really introduces you us, and it brings us in with absolute ease. So really a stunning introduction at that. And so, of course, we see a scene of incredibly implied motion, and I'll show you exactly what I mean there. So constant curves within a piece are always going to imply motion in some way or another. And so what you see here is kind of that swirl. And that swirl is exactly what gives that incredible sense of energy, but also, of course, that sense of motion or that implied motion. So that energy and that motion definitely go hand in hand whenever we're taking a look at this work. And you'll also see a bit of texture here, kind of like a divine dust in the realm of texture, very gritty, but it's also kind of like that pixie dust, that very classic fantasy look that we're really used to seeing. And so we also see our subject appears to be in the midst of casting a spell. Of course, you have the swirl of the hands. That definitely implies that there's some type of thing going on here, whether it's spell casting or some type of ritual or some type of tradition here. And so like we said, that seed of motion is incredibly important, of course, casting a spell as well. And then we also see how these kind of like almost crystalline portals of light frame the scene here as well. So they are kind of that perfect barrier or that island to frame exactly what's happening here in the center region of the spatial composition. So I think that's also important to note. It really draws us in, and of course it captures your attention with absolute ease. And so whenever we take a look at the genre of fantasy art, it is very, very broad. Everything from classic mythological art from ages ago, the ancient work is still considered fantasy. Everything to even surrealism or mannerism in the most recent times are also considered fantasy as well. And so we really do see a mix of religious, mythological symbolism, medieval lore. We have imaginative surrealism, dreams. Everything combines to really create what we know of as fantasy today. And a lot of that kind of witchcraft or wizardry also has a lot of root in medieval times as well. And so the result, of course, is a very magical visual experience, and they always incorporate kind of visions of the divine, and that's mainly through that mythological, that religious symbolism that we talked about just a second ago. And so now we're seeing the birth of a very, very interesting movement. We're seeing, of course, with the continual rise in mainstream adoption of AI generative art, we're watching as many people discover what I like to call fantasy AI generative art. And what I mean by that are these elements of fantasy such as light and magic, such as crystals, wizards, portals, astral gates, everything in between. We're really seeing a lot of that in the AI generative art scene. And I think it's incredibly important because some people who have never really been able to create a very complex piece of art can go into one of these, say, public or even private programs, public being something like Disco Diffusion or private being something like Midjourney or Dolly 2, and they can create these incredible scenes of whatever they like. I've seen a lot of horror, I've seen a lot of science fiction, I've seen a lot of fantasy, I've seen a lot of mixture of all of those as well. And so, with this AI generative art scene, it's in continual rise. We're also seeing kind of a rebirth or a renaissance of the fantasy art movement as well. And I thought that was really important. I really want to kind of talk a little bit about the roots as I did just a second ago. That medieval lore, that mythological, that religious symbolism, those all go into fantasy art to really create what we know as contemporary fantasy art or the modern scenes that we love and cherish today. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this piece. It is a very magical, very divine, even spiritual spatial piece that we're looking at here. And like I said, this is coming from Crypto Algo. So if you guys enjoyed, go check out Crypto Algo's other pieces. Artist is doing a bunch of really good stuff. Even has some NFTs minted if you guys want to support the artist directly to really allow the artist to keep creating for us, which of course is that's exactly what we know and love. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.